Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back today. And I want to start by saying that I realize the title may seem somewhat alarmist against a backdrop of positive media and all this spin that we keep hearing. In fact, that's one of the reasons I decided to create this video today, because I was watching some of these financial news channels in the US, and I saw one from Canada and the UK earlier today, and they were all talking about this recovery and how good the economic data is and all these other things. And of course, I track this on a day-by-day basis, and what I'm seeing is a convergence of horrendous economic data. In fact, everything, in my opinion, is pointing towards a huge recession, if not a collapse of different economies. We could even see a global recession or even depression if things continue to spiral downwards. And of course, as things converge together, they get worse. As GDP starts to contract, things get worse. As workers like yourself start to lose their jobs, or wages start to either spiral downwards, or people just don't have those wages. That is discretionary income. It's spending into the economy. The US economy alone, 2/3 of their economy, their GDP, is from consumer spending. So I saw this article then over the weekend. Let me just pull this up for you. And it was here on Zero Hedge. It's titled 10 Red Flags Warn of Looming Recession. Now, because this article is somewhat brief in nature, what I want to do is I want to take each one of these and really give you a lot of detail around exactly what is happening with the economy. So that is exactly what I've got for you today. I've got really detailed analysis and figures for those of you who like this sort of stuff. You like to hear the data so that you can have this evidence for yourself and realize just how bad things are becoming in the economy. I'm absolutely astounded that the media keep repeating all of these lies about the strong economy and Bidenomics and Sunak's big recovery and everything else. There is no such thing. In fact, crime as well is running rampant. We're seeing the very fabric of society just being pulled apart. I'm sure you're seeing these videos daily as well of just the most horrendous things. So let's start with the first one then. So we'll go through these different red flags. Number one, the Conference Board's US leading economic index is showing contraction. It declined by 0.4% in July, another 0.7% in June, and 0.6% in May. So we're seeing contraction there. This was the 16th consecutive month of falls across the index, and it showed a 4% decline over the last 6 months from January to July. Now, this is a key indicator here. So July actually showed the longest streak of consecutive drops in the index since going back to, guess when? The Great Recession of 2008. And they're actually forecasting, this was heavily shot down by the White House and by the media, of course, but they are actually forecasting a US recession from Q3, so now anywhere through to Q1 of next year, actually beginning. I think it's going to be pushed back a little bit, and I think this is probably because of what we're seeing with other economic data as well as monetary policy, and we haven't even seen exactly what the Fed's going to do, but we'll come on to balance sheets shortly. So not that you need to know this in detail, but there's 10 components that make up this index. I'll just give you the summary. Manufacturing, initial claims for unemployment, insurance, new orders on consumer goods, the ISM index for new orders as well, so something separate, new orders for non-defense capital goods, building permits, what are we seeing there? Stock prices in the S&P, the leading credit index, interest rate spread. So this is a very interesting one. We'll come on to this later on. And the average consumer expectations for business conditions. People often don't use the statistics from consumer expectations, but it's a big mistake not to do this, because you've got to think of the psychology of a person, and what is a person? It's part of a family group. Well, I say that's being destroyed at the moment as well. But we're seeing this confidence being eroded here So the family group, what's that part of? A smaller society, and that's part of a bigger society. You could say that is a countrywide society. Well, when you look at this across the board, the confidence index is getting worse as well. So if you don't have as much confidence, are you going to go out and spend? Well, the data says no. Consumer confidence is the next big one. So that declined from 114 down to 106. That is an enormous drop right there. And as I mentioned, that is 2/3 of the US economy. This isn't just US, by the way, this also includes other Western economies. It includes the UK as well in some aspects of the charts. But they also looked at income, business and labor, and this all declined from 88.3 down to 80.2. Again, that is enormous. What I'm doing here is, as opposed to just, talking rhetoric or spin or propaganda, I'm giving you actual numbers. What you'll notice when the White House or whoever comes out, or the media, they don't like to give you numbers. You notice that? They say, oh, there's this announcement that's just come out. The economy's doing great, it's booming, and they'll give you one tiny thing that is up or is positive, not looking at the other 10 things on the opposite side to that, which are negative. And often those negative things might be causing certain thing here to be positive. It doesn't mean it is. An example I can give you there is credit card spending. I saw this just the other week. The media were talking about all this new spending here and this is great and everything else. But actually it was at the expense of credit cards going up in debt and the savings rate falling. You see, they never talk about these things. And this leads me on to the third thing then. Consumers are foregoing big ticket purchases at the moment. People are cutting back. And again, this is all about psychology. Why do people cut back? Because they're expecting something bad to happen, or they don't have those financial cushions there in place. You've heard all the statistics, I'm sure, about the average family now is just $400. It used to be $1,000, then it was $500, $400 away from bankruptcy. So if they got an expense that was over $400, they just wouldn't be able to cover it, and they've maxed out their credit cards and their lines of debt and all these other things. This is one of the reasons that I actually created my courses for you, my finance courses. And I was only looking at the statistics on it earlier today, where it showed that there's a number of you who I know who have bought those courses, thank you so much, and have not yet finished those courses, not watched them all the way through. I highly, please finish watching those courses. Even if you just have to add 15 minutes in the morning, get up 15 minutes earlier, 20 minutes in the morning, maybe change your routine or somewhere along the line. Just find 15 or 20 minutes each day and get those courses finished. The macro course teach you everything that's going on right now, so you will understand what's coming next. You can prepare for it. It's the same with the macro and stock market is one course. If you've got a pension, if you've got investments in the stock market, see the writing on the wall, see what is going to happen. You've got to understand liquidity. You've got to understand that the stock market can even go up in a recession if the Fed start creating more liquidity. What we're seeing right now is a contraction. They're destroying liquidity. We're seeing capital outflows from banks to money markets. We're seeing all these sort of things. You've got to understand this if you want to position yourself to protect what you've got, pensions, savings, investments, and then profit from it. Because let me tell you, that's what these big banks and financial institutions are going to do. They're going to make fortunes in this next recession, while the average middle class person is going to get wiped out. Don't let yourself be that person. Finish those courses. It's the same with the money psychology course. I spent so long creating for you. I even had to take a break from YouTube just to get that course ready. Get everything ready so that your mindset is clear and you understand this future that we're moving into as well. It's going to be completely different from the past. You've got to understand this future. Jobs, investments. You've got to get your entire house in order. If you've got debt, get that debt cleared. You've got to prepare, because again, you can take advantage of what is going to come. And I'm not saying take advantage of other people. I'm saying that you can create new things or even move to different sectors. That's part of the course as well, so that you can actually benefit massively like the patterns of '08 in the last recession. So again, just really please make sure that you get those courses finished for those of you who have taken them. If you haven't yet taken the courses, the link is below in the description and a pinned comment. And the money psychology course is still on sale until the end of the month. So please just get that course while you still can. Now let's carry on with consumer spending then and what's actually happening. So the survey that they've just completed of investors finds 56% expect consumer spending to decline early next year. That is a huge amount. 21% expect a drop as soon as Q4, so just coming up very shortly. We have leading US economists saying that the unsustainable consumer spending on entertainment is also going to cause a crash or a recession. We have got retailers, various retailers here, everything from Macy's to Foot Lockers and other, saying that people are no longer spending as much on discretionary income. Where they are, it tends to be on credit cards. They're maxing out their credit cards. Spending growth fell 1.6% last quarter alone. We've also got these mortgage rates. We've got credit card interest rates going up, loan interest going up, auto loan interest going up. All of these payments are going up because of the interest rate rises. And we're already past that point that I talked about back in 2020, where we see 6% interest rates on a mortgage. That is the breaking point for a housing market where it starts to come off the bell curve and begin to slow. So we've seen that, we're seeing that. We're going to see a lot of deals coming up later on, although inventory is still high at the moment, which is keeping prices high. But watch out for, here's one thing to look out for, the big institutions, your BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, even the big banks. They are moving heavily into the single family housing market, and I can assure you they're going to start sweeping them up through LLCs, private limited companies, where you won't even know there'll be subsidiaries, and this is what we're going to see a lot more of as well. Now, the other telltale sign that we've got a recession coming, and this could be on par with '08, is that furniture sales are declining. Now, what did we see prior to '08, or as we went into that? We saw furniture sales declining. Home Depot fell by 5.5%. Bassett furniture sales dropped 26%, a really good indicator there. And RH reported a 19% decline. That is a pattern. It's not an isolated incident. Moving on to number 4 then, we have credit cards getting maxed out. I won't go too detailed on this because I've covered this on a sole video in great detail. But it's already past 1 trillion and the rate's gone up, so people are getting massively squeezed. Mortgage balances are up to $12 trillion, household debt at over $17 trillion. This is really, really bad, ladies and gents, while these rates are high. Number 5 then is banks are now reluctant to lend. And this raises a number of problems. Firstly, because of the rising interest rates, they have now weakened the demand from the public, from the business sector for loans. That's the first thing. That means there's going to be restrictions or reductions into R&D within companies. So you're going to see less research and development. You're already seeing that knock-on effect for Home Depot, home improvements, other things. So this will result in a lowering of GDP as well, although they are obviously faking the GDP data, as they always seem to do, changing the metrics so it seems a lot better than it is. We're also seeing problems with the commercial real estate. Remember the amount of empty office blocks, commercial real estate, that doesn't seem to get talked a lot enough, but you can see it for yourself when you go to the mall, when you go to these areas, where you go to downtown areas, the offices are empty. Look at the lights, they are turned off. And this is all coming up for refinancing very shortly. What do you think is going to happen? Nothing good at all. These banks are going to be sat on all of these commercial loans that are, a lot of them will go bad. Bank of America and JP Morgan Chase have just issued a dire warning as well around the new Federal Reserve proposals, and they're saying that this is going to force a re-evaluation of people's credit worthiness, and if they then have to stop giving out credit, this is going to cause more of a contraction. And we actually have a a chart, I think, on here. In fact, let me just give you the Fed data straight from the Federal Reserve here. So look what we've got. We have a contraction already. We had a peak here at 17.5. That was in March time. And then it dropped off a cliff to 17.3. And ever since, it's been trending downwards. If you look at this, you can see it's trending downwards, 17.2. So if we now have a more of a tightening cycle, this is going to drop even lower. And remember, I know this is going back 3 to 4 years ago now, but I did make a video which explains this. Sorry, it's probably not good production quality, but there was this video here where I talked about deflation in 2020, high inflation 21 to 23, then stagflation afterwards. I mean, bearing in mind this was 3 to 4 years ago, that is not bad for a forecast. We haven't quite hit the stagflation yet, and we probably won't hit it this year in 2023, but it is looking most likely for 2024. So that was not bad, considering most economists can't even forecast 3 weeks to 3 months out, let alone 3 years. Now, I should also show you the delinquency rate here of all commercial banks, again, Fed data. And what are we seeing? We saw an uptick as we went through the 08 recession, and we've seen this curvature here. And if you look where it sort of bottomed out at 1.5, but what have we noticed ever since Q4 of 2021? It is rising again. It's up to 2.7 already. And I think this is only going to get worse. Now let's move on to number 6 then. This is corporate bonds. They're now maturing, and refinancing is going to be a lot more costly. So what have we seen? We've seen delinquencies or defaults in 2023. This was just the first half of 2023. Was 53% higher than 2022. And that was a bad year. And we're even seeing an increase in June of another 3.8%. So this is absolutely huge. Moody's forecasts a global default rate of 4.7 by year end. That is enormous. 4.7% globally. And they said it could reach 13.7%, surpassing a 2008 crisis level. And Bank of America is now warning of a full-blown recession that could result in nearly $1 trillion in corporate debt defaults. So honestly, ladies and gents, this just goes on and on. I'm just giving you the key snippets here. Even manufacturing, point number 7, it remains in a prolonged post-2020 slump. It's declined for 10 straight months. It's now registered 47.6%. And if you know the index, anything below 50 is a contraction. Orders are declining more quickly than factories are producing output. Hiring has slowed as well. So what does that mean? GDP, spending, employer cycling. We have employment scarring as well. All these things are coming in. And of course, we have the cascading crises, point number 8 here. So we have Europe, energy, fertilizer. We talked about this when they cut off the energy, when they cut off the fertilizer. What has this resulted in? It's resulted in having to buy the energy for more expensive elsewhere, or some companies have cut back, thereby cutting back on output. As a result of this, you've got a lot of big investors are now sort of very concerned. They're shifting towards bonds within the UK and Germany. So again, indicators that the UK and Germany are set for heavy contraction. Even in China, we're seeing big issues as well. Land and home prices have fallen 5% annually. They're seeing contraction there with manufacturing and output. But one of the main things I really want to talk about here before we go on to the inflation aspect is the yield curve. So the yield curve is so telling of a recession. And in fact, I made some notes here just so I can explain what this is in really simple terms. So you have treasuries, which are debt securities. So these are issued by the US government. And then they raise this money in order for spending. So really simple. They come in various maturities. So you've got T-bills. So these are your short-term maturities. Medium-term. So these are your T-notes. And then your long-term, which are your T-bonds. That's the easiest way to think about it. So actually this 10-year and 2-year, let's just look at that. That's been inverted ever since July of 2022. That typically signals that we're going to go into a recession within 18 months. Again, I'm saying it's typical, but there are some deviations to that, but it is highly, highly likely. So bottom line then, let me just get this point across. For the 3-month and 10-year to be inverted for so long, months and months in a row, is highly, highly recessionary in nature. So let's just finish up with point number 10 then, which is all about inflation. Inflation in a lot of developed economies has gotten stuck. The UK is a prime example of this. It has gotten stuck, even though UK rate is 5.2% and the US rate is 5.5% right now in terms of the interest rate. The US went up quicker than the UK did, faster than the EU as well. But they also have this privilege of being the reserve currency, which also helps matters. But the problem that comes with stubborn inflation is that if it doesn't start moving, the central bank will most probably, or the most likely outcome is to raise rates even further, which may seem almost impossible for the US right now, but it's still possible to happen. For the UK, it's highly probable to happen because it's the only way they're going to be able to get this inflation down. They're playing this waiting game, hoping it will come down its own naturally, and it did, and they gave themselves a pat on the back. No, it was not because of their measures, it was because the oil price came down. I mean, energy inputs, ladies and gents, it's simple economics here. But what's happened now, this is turned around, the oil price has gone back up. So watch for inflation going up, watch for US inflation going up. This is what the oil price does. So it's kind of a catch-22. Because if inflation goes up further, they're going to have to hike rates further. That's going to put more pressure onto the economy, onto householders who are already stretched. What will this then do then? Well, consumer spending, it's cyclical in nature. There'll be less money going into businesses. That means there'll be more layoffs from businesses. That means less people having money to spend into the economy. That means house prices potentially falling further because people don't have jobs or they can't afford it, or they're maxed out on their affordability metrics by the bank, which is also tightening. I mean, bottom line that I'm trying to get across here is this is really, really bad. Do not believe this hype that you keep hearing on the media, or you're going to end up like those people in that Great Depression Diary series, that 3-part series that I made, where they were all told everything's great, everything's fine, the economy's doing well, and then within months they're slaughtering the zoo animals for meat. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. This is how crazy it got during that Great Depression, when people's accounts were completely locked down. They couldn't access their funds for years. What about in 33 when gold was made illegal? These are a sign, they're a warning of things that have happened in the past, but you could see repeats or different versions of these in the future. Do not get swept up with this mass hysteria of, the madness of crowds. If you've read any of those books, Claude Bowers and some of the others, don't get swept away, because this is exactly what happens before a big economic crash, or even if it's a mild recession. This is big enough to wipe out a lot of people. So again, don't get caught out by any of this. All of my courses are there for you. They'll teach you how to protect yourself. Apart from that, take care, God bless you and your family, and I will see you tomorrow.